The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber opened with a soft hiss. Chen Wei walked through them with steady steps, his black formal suit looking plain compared to the shimmering robes and energy fields worn by other species representatives. He carried a simple data pad in his hand, nothing more. The chamber itself was a wonder that would have left humans from a century ago speechless. It floated in the void of space, protected by invisible shields that kept air in and danger out. Through the transparent walls, 1,000 stars burned in the darkness. Beings from 300 different worlds filled the circular rows of seats that rose up like a giant theater. At the center of it all, 3 platforms held the representatives of the most powerful races in the galaxy. The Vorthak hegemon stood tallest, his crystalline body catching and splitting light into rainbow patterns. Next to him, the Melody representative floated in a bubble of thought energy, her 4 eyes closed in meditation. The third platform held what looked like a living storm cloud crackling with electricity. The Etherean speaker. Chen Wei stepped onto the small platform reserved for new petitioners. It was deliberately placed lower than all others, forcing whoever stood there to look up at everyone else. He didn't seem to mind. The council recognizes Chen Wei of Earth, the Vorthak hegemon announced, his voice sounding like crystal chimes. You may present your petition. Thank you, hegemon, Wei said, his voice calm and clear. The universal translator made sure everyone understood him. Though some species snickered at the simple mouth sounds humans used for communication, Earth requests full membership in the Galactic Council, with all rights and responsibilities that includes. A wave of chittering, humming, and other sounds that counted as laughter spread through the chamber. The Vorthak hegemon raised one crystalline arm for silence. Humans, he began, and the way he said it made the words sound like children. Your species discovered faster than light travel only 300 years ago. My people have been traveling the stars for 50,000 years. What could you possibly offer the Council? Wei had expected this. We offer fresh perspectives, diverse thinking patterns, and our recent breakthrough in 7th-dimensional physics. This time the laughter was louder. The Melody representative opened her 4 eyes, each one focusing on Wei independently. When she spoke, her words appeared directly in everyone's mind. 7th-dimensional physics? Young human? Do you even understand what you're claiming? The greatest minds of the Etherean collective have only theoretical models of the 7th dimension. No species has achieved practical application. With respect, Wei replied, humanity has. Our research station on Jupiter's moon Europa has successfully created stable 7th dimensional fields. The Etherean speaker's cloud form flickered with what might have been amusement. Its voice came as controlled thunder. Impossible. You barely manage 4th-dimensional jumps. Your ships still use reaction mass for sublight travel. We've observed your fleets. They're held together with metal bolts and chemical welding. Our engineering may seem simple, Wei admitted, but our understanding of reality has grown in unexpected directions. The Vorthak hegemon's crystalline form chimed with mockery. Shall we review the facts? Please observe. He waved his arm and holographic displays filled the chamber. The first image showed a human cargo ship next to a Vorthak trader vessel. The human ship looked like a metal box with engines strapped to it, while the Vorthak ship seemed to be made of flowing light. Human vessels, maximum speed 12 times light. Vorthak vessels 140 times light. The image changed. Human weapons, particle beams and nuclear warheads, Melody weapons, pure thought-given form, capable of unmaking matter at the quantum level. Another change, human shields, electromagnetic barriers and ablative armor, Etherean protection, phase shift technology that moves attacks into alternate dimensions. Each comparison brought more laughter. Some of the younger species were actually pointing at the human technology displays, chattering in their native languages about how primitive it all looked. Wei stood quietly through it all, his face neutral. But please, the hegemon continued, his tone dripping with false politeness. Tell us about this amazing 7th-dimensional breakthrough. I'm sure the Council would love to hear how a species that still uses chemical rockets for planetary launches has surpassed us all. Wei touched his data pad. Our research shows that consciousness itself operates on 7th-dimensional principles. Human neural plasticity allows us to perceive patterns that consciousness. The Melody representative's mental voice carried waves of condescension. You speak of consciousness to the Melody. We are living thought. We abandoned physical brains eons ago, yet you claim superior understanding. I claim different understanding, Wei corrected carefully. The Etherian speaker rumbled. Different, yes, like how a child's drawing is different from a master's painting. More laughter filled the chamber. Wei noticed several younger species representatives looking at him with pity. The humans were the newest kids in class, and they were being reminded of it. The Vorthak hegemon raised his arms dramatically. Let us vote then. All in favor of granting humanity full membership? Not a single appendage, tentacle, or energy field rose in support. All in favor of granting humanity observer status, with re-evaluation possible in 1,000 standard years? Almost every member voted yes. It was the expected outcome. Observer status was what most species received for their first few millennia in the Council. The motion passes, the hegemon announced unnecessarily. Humanity is granted observer status. You may attend council sessions, trade in designated zones, and learn from your betters. Perhaps in 1,000 years, if your species survives that long, you might be ready for actual membership. Wei bowed slightly. The council is most generous. We accept observer status with gratitude. The Melody representative's eyes narrowed. You accept very easily, human. No protests? No demands for reconsideration? Why would I protest? Wei asked. You've made your position clear. Actions speak louder than words, as we say on Earth. Actions? The Etherian speaker's cloud form darkened. What actions could you possibly take that would matter to us? We smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. There's a military exhibition in 3 months at the Void Nexus. A demonstration of Council members' defensive capabilities. Earth would like to send our newest vessel, the UES Paradigm, as observers. To learn, of course. The laughter this time was the loudest yet. The idea of a human ship at the military exhibition, where the greatest warships in the galaxy showed off their power, was apparently the funniest thing many of them had heard in years. By all means, the Vorthak hegemon said between chiming laughs, bring your little ship. It will be educational for your species to see what real technology looks like. My daughter commands the Paradigm, Wei mentioned casually. Captain Sarah Chen, she's looking forward to learning from all of you. Your daughter? The Melody representative's mental voice carried amusement. How quaint. Humans still practice nepotism. We practice family, Wei corrected. But yes, she earned her position through merit. The Paradigm is our most advanced vessel. It would be a shame if it wasn't commanded by our best. Most advanced, the Etherian speaker rumbled mockingly. I'm sure it has very impressive chemical thrusters. Wei gathered his data pad and prepared to leave. Thank you for your time, honored council members. We'll see you at the exhibition. As he walked toward the exit, he heard the various species talking among themselves. The universal translator caught fragments. 300 years and they think they understand dimensions we've studied for millennia. Did you see their technology display? My offspring could build better. 7th dimensional physics. What a joke. I almost feel bad for them. Almost. The doors closed behind Wei with the same soft hiss. He walked down the corridor toward his simple human shuttle, the sound of alien laughter still echoing from the chamber. He touched the communicator in his ear. Sarah, it's done. They gave us observer status just as we expected. His daughter's voice came through clearly. Did they laugh when you mentioned 7th dimensional physics? Oh yes, the whole chamber. And the exhibition? They can't wait to see our little ship try to keep up with their warships. There was a pause, then Sarah's voice carried a hint of satisfaction. Perfect. The Paradigm will be ready. Let them laugh now, Dad. They won't be laughing for long. Wei entered his shuttle and settled into the pilot seat. Through the viewport, he could see the massive council station floating in space, home to representatives of 300 species who thought humanity was a joke. No, he said quietly to himself as he started the engine. They won't be laughing for long at all. The Void Nexus floated at the edge of known space, where the last stars faded into the endless dark. It was the perfect location for military demonstrations. Empty space for millions of kilometers in every direction, with no inhabited worlds that might get caught in stray weapons fire. Today, the emptiness was filled with hundreds of warships from across the galaxy. They hung in space like deadly jewels, each one representing the peak of their species' military technology. Giant viewing platforms had been set up for dignitaries and observers, protected by the strongest shields known to the Council. The Vorthak had brought 3 of their phase-shift dreadnoughts, each one a kilometer long and seeming to exist in multiple places at once. Their crystalline hulls caught starlight and turned it into weapon energy, storing power in dimensions that normal space couldn't touch. The Melody fleet was harder to look at. Their ships were made of solid thought, constantly shifting between shapes as the collective consciousness of their crews imagined new forms. One moment a ship might look like a sphere, the next like a flower made of metal, then something that hurt to perceive with three-dimensional eyes. The Etherians had only sent one vessel, but it was enough. Their Storm-class battleship existed partially in 6 different dimensions at once. Parts of it would fade in and out of view as it rotated through realities, never fully present in any single one. Weapons fired at it had a disturbing tendency to hit alternate versions while the real ship remained untouched. Dozens of other species had brought their best. The aquatic Bendathi showed off ships that looked like living coral, but could survive direct hits from stars. The machine race called the Synthesis arrived in vessels that could rebuild themselves in seconds, adapting to any threat. Even the peaceful gardeners had come, their bioships covered in vines that could drain energy from anything they touched. On the main viewing platform, the Council's elite gathered to watch. The Vorthak hegemon stood at the center, his crystalline body specially polished for the occasion. Around him, ambassadors and military leaders from the most powerful races chatted and placed bets on whose ships would perform best in the demonstrations. "Has anyone seen the human vessel yet?" asked the Melody representative, her 4 eyes scanning space with amusement. "Perhaps it broke down on the way," suggested a Bendathi admiral, their water suit gurgling with laughter. "I heard they still use fission reactors." "Fission? Can you imagine?" The Etherian speaker's cloud form crackled. "I sent a scout to check the arrival vectors. Nothing on any sensors. They probably realized how embarrassing this would be and stayed home." No, the Vorthak hegemon said, raising a crystalline hand. Chen Wei confirmed they were coming. "His daughter is supposedly commanding their most advanced ship. I'm quite looking forward to seeing what humans consider advanced." There, a young synthesis unit pointed with a mechanical arm. "Jump signature incoming. Very small. Must be them." Space rippled in a way that made several species frown. It wasn't the normal tear of a 4th-dimensional jump or the smooth slide of 5th-dimensional travel. It was more like space simply decided to fold a piece of paper and poke a hole through it. The UES paradigm emerged from nowhere. The first thing everyone noticed was how small it was. Where the Vorthak dreadnought stretched for a kilometer, the paradigm was maybe 300 meters long. It was shaped like an elongated diamond, with a hull so dark it seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Strange geometric patterns covered its surface, triangles within circles within squares, that seemed to move when you tried to focus on them. That's it? The Bendathi Admiral's translation device couldn't hide their disbelief. That's their most advanced ship? The paradigm drifted toward the demonstration area with no visible engine glow, no reaction mass, no exotic particles, no dimensional wake. It simply moved, as if space itself was politely getting out of its way. "I'm reading its power signature," a synthesis unit announced. Wait, this can't be right. The readings keep changing. One moment it shows almost no power. The next it spikes beyond my sensor's limits, then back to nothing. The communication channel opened, and a human female voice spoke clearly. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the UES Paradigm. We're here to observe the military exhibition, as authorized by the Council." The Vorthak hegemon activated his own communicator. "Welcome, Captain Chen. How nice of you to join us. We were just about to begin the demonstrations. Your vessel can observe from the designated safety zone with the other non-military ships." "Actually, hegemon," Sarah's voice carried a tone that might have been innocence, "we were hoping to participate. As observers, of course. We learn better by doing." The laughter across the communication channels was immediate and loud. Even species without lungs found ways to express their amusement. "Participate?" The hegemon's voice chimed with mirth. "Young Captain, this is a military demonstration. We'll be using live weapons, real combat scenarios. Your little ship would be vaporized in seconds." "We understand the risks," Sarah replied calmly. "Earth takes full responsibility for any damage to our vessel." The Melody representative's mental voice touched all minds present. "This is absurd. We cannot allow a primitive vessel to endanger itself for pride." "Let them try," rumbled the Etherian speaker. A quick demonstration of reality might teach humanity humility. The gathered species began discussing among themselves. Most seemed to think it would be cruel to allow the humans to participate, while others thought it would be educational. Finally, the Vorthak hegemon raised his arms for silence. "Very well, Captain Chen. Your vessel may participate in the initial demonstration, a simple target practice exercise. Try not to get hurt." "You're very kind, hegemon," Sarah replied. Something in her tone made a few of the more perceptive species pause. But most were too busy being amused to notice. The paradigm moved to the demonstration zone, looking absolutely tiny next to the warships of major powers. Several species had started recording, wanting to capture what they assumed would be a historic embarrassment for humanity. The first demonstration, the hegemon announced, is defensive capabilities. Ships will be fired upon by automated platforms using increasing levels of force. Last vessel with intact shields wins. Dozens of automated platforms materialized around the demonstration zone, each one armed with different weapons from across the galaxy. They would start with simple lasers and work up to antimatter bombs and gravity weapons. The great ships began powering up their defenses. The Vorthak dreadnoughts shimmered as they activated their phase shields. The Melody ships wrapped themselves in layers of crystallized thought. The Etherian battleships started existing in 6 dimensions simultaneously, becoming a harder target to hit. The paradigm did nothing visible. It simply floated there, dark and quiet. "Captain Chen," the hegemon called out, "you need to activate your shields. The demonstration is beginning." "We're ready," Sarah replied simply. The first wave began. Thousands of laser beams lit up space, creating a deadly light show. The advanced ship's shields flared as they absorbed the energy, creating colorful displays of their defensive technologies. Several smaller vessels from minor species had to withdraw immediately, their shields overloading. The lasers that hit the paradigm simply stopped. They didn't reflect or get absorbed. The beams would travel through space, reach the dark hull, and then just end, as if they had never existed at all. "Interesting," muttered a synthesis unit. "Some kind of absorption field?" The second wave brought particle beams and plasma weapons. The Vorthak shields bent space to deflect them. The Melody ships thought the attacks out of existence. The Etherian battleship let them pass through to alternate dimensions. Every attack that reached the paradigm ceased to exist at the moment of contact. No explosions, no energy discharge, no debris. The weapons simply stopped being real the instant they would have caused damage. "Impossible," the Bendathi admiral gurgled. "No shield technology works like that. There should be some energy dispersion, some reaction." The third wave unleashed antimatter warheads. Several more ships had to withdraw as their shields strained. The major powers' vessels handled them easily, their advanced defenses turning antimatter into harmless light or shunting it into other realities. The warheads that reached the paradigm detonated normally, creating brilliant spheres of annihilation. But when the explosions cleared, the ship was still there, completely untouched. Not undamaged, untouched, as if the explosions had happened in a different universe entirely. The watching crowds had gone quiet. This wasn't normal shield technology. This was something else entirely. "Final wave," the hegemon announced, his voice less confident than before. "Singularity weapons." Artificial black holes launched toward the remaining ships. Only the most advanced vessels could handle these. Weapons that twisted space-time itself into a killing tool. The Vorthak dreadnoughts phased partially out of reality to avoid them. The Melody ships thought themselves into quantum superpositions where the black holes both did and didn't exist. The Etherian battleship shifted through dimensions so quickly that the singularities couldn't lock onto it. 3 singularities converged on the paradigm. The watching crowd held their breath, certain that this would finally overwhelm whatever impossible defense the humans had. The silence stretched across the demonstration zone like a held breath. Hundreds of the galaxy's most advanced military minds tried to process what they had just witnessed. The small human ship floated serenely among them, unmarked and unaffected by weapons that could crack moons. The Vorthak hegemon was the first to recover, his crystalline form ringing with forced confidence. "An interesting trick, Captain Chen. Some kind of probability manipulation, perhaps. We've seen theoretical models of such technology." "Theoretical," Sarah's voice agreed over the comm. "That's what everyone kept telling my father. That 7th-dimensional physics was just theoretical. The melody representative's 4 eyes focused intently on the paradigm. Her mental voice touched every mind present, carrying waves of curiosity and concern. You claim to be manipulating reality itself, selecting outcomes. This is impossible without massive energy requirements. Your ship shows almost no power signature. That's because we're not using power in the way you understand it, Sarah explained. The paradigm exists in quantum superposition across infinite probability streams. We don't need energy to change reality. We simply choose which reality we're experiencing. A synthesis unit buzzed with mechanical laughter. Absurd. Even if such technology existed, the computational requirements alone would need a computer the size of a moon. Only if you're computing in three-dimensional space, Sarah replied. Our quantum consciousness system processes infinite probability streams simultaneously by existing in all of them at once. The Etherean speaker's cloud form darkened with skepticism. Pretty words, human. But this was just defense. Can your ship actually fight? Or does it just hide behind impossible physics? We didn't come here to fight, Sarah said. We came to learn. Learn? The Vorthak hegemon's chime carried mockery. What could you possibly learn from a simple defensive demonstration? You haven't even seen our weapons yet. Actually, hegemon, we've learned quite a bit. Your phase shift technology is impressive, folding space in 17 different patterns to create overlapping shield layers. The Melody thought weapons are fascinating too, using crystallized consciousness as both processor and projector. And the Etherean dimensional shifting happens at exactly 1.7 trillion times per second, which must require incredible precision. The communication channels went quiet again. She had just described classified technical specifications that should have been impossible to detect. How do you know that? The Etherean speaker's rumble carried the first hint of worry. We can see all possible realities, Sarah explained patiently, including the ones where you explained your technology to us, including the ones where we've already fought, including the ones where we're allies. Every possibility exists simultaneously until observed and collapsed into a single timeline. The Bendathi Admiral's water suit gurgled nervously. This is madness. No species can perceive that way. The brain would burn out in seconds. A normal brain would, Sarah agreed. But humans are different. We evolved on a chaos world, with hundreds of different cultures, thousands of languages, millions of conflicting beliefs existing simultaneously. Our brains adapted to hold contradictions, to see multiple viewpoints at once. We were already thinking in parallel realities before we knew what they were. The Vorthak hegemon had heard enough. Pretty speeches won't win battles, Captain. Since your ship survived the defensive test, perhaps you'd like to try something more challenging. My personal dreadnought against your vessel. A simple combat exercise. Murmurs rippled through the watching crowds. The hegemon's dreadnought was one of the most powerful ships in known space. This would be a massacre. That's very generous, hegemon, Sarah replied. But I wouldn't want to embarrass you? Embarrass me? The hegemon's crystalline form rang with indignation. Little human, I've been commanding warships since your species was discovering fire. Accept the challenge or admit your technology is just clever tricks. There was a pause. Then Sarah's voice came back, carrying something that might have been amusement. Very well, hegemon. Standard combat rules? First to achieve killing position wins? Agreed. And to make it fair, I'll even let you have the first shot. The crowd moved back as the two ships positioned themselves. The Vorthak dreadnought was massive. A kilometer of crystalline death powered by captive stars. Its hull rippled with phase shifts, existing in 17 different dimensional configurations simultaneously. Weapons ports opened along its length, revealing planet cracker cannons that had ended civilizations. The paradigm looked like a toy next to it. A dark splinter against the cosmos. Begin when ready. Captain, the hegemon announced magnanimously. We don't need to begin, Sarah said. We've already won. Before anyone could ask what she meant, the Vorthak dreadnought suddenly lurched. Its phase shields flickered and began collapsing in sequence, each layer failing in perfect order from outer to inner. The great ship spun slowly, its weapons powering down one by one. What? The hegemon's voice rang with alarm. What's happening? All systems are failing, but you haven't fired anything. We didn't need to, Sarah explained. 3 minutes ago, you had a 0.72% chance of experiencing a quantum fluctuation in your shield harmonics. We simply selected the reality where that fluctuation happened. Then we selected the reality where it cascaded through your systems. Your ship is perfectly fine. We just chose the timeline where it defeats itself. The dreadnought spin accelerated as more systems failed. In less than 30 seconds, the most powerful warship in the Vorthak fleet was dead in space, spinning helplessly. Impossible. The hegemon's outrage echoed across all channels. This is cheating. You can't just choose reality. There are laws. Conservation of energy. Causality. Entropy. All of those laws still apply, Sarah said calmly. Just not in the way you're used to thinking about them. Every possible outcome already exists in quantum superposition. We're not creating new realities, we're just selecting which one becomes observed truth. Your ship was always going to have that fluctuation in some timeline. We just made sure it was this one. The watching crowd erupted in chaos. Some species were running detailed scans of the paradigm, trying to understand its technology. Others were recalculating the threat assessment of humanity. Still others were quietly moving their ships away from the small dark vessel that had just defeated one of the galaxy's greatest warships without firing a shot. The Etherian. Speaker's cloud form crackled with energy. This cannot be real. Show us actual combat. Fire your weapons. We don't have weapons in the traditional sense, Sarah admitted. We don't need them, observe. The paradigm suddenly wasn't where it had been. It hadn't moved, it simply existed somewhere else now. Then it was in 3 places at once. Then 7, then 1 again, but in a different location. We exist in all possible positions simultaneously, Sarah explained as her ship flickered through space. We just choose which one to collapse into reality. Distance is meaningless. Defense is irrelevant. We're already everywhere and nowhere. To demonstrate, the paradigm appeared inside the phase shield of a Melody thought ship, then outside it, then above it, then in 17 places around it simultaneously, before collapsing back to one location. The Melody representative's mental voice was strained. This is temporal manipulation. You're breaking causality itself? Not breaking, Sarah corrected. Using. Causality only seems fixed because you experience time linearly, but time is just another dimension, and in the 7th dimension, cause and effect are selections, not absolutes. She continued the demonstration. A dead asteroid at the edge of the zone suddenly exploded, then reformed, then exploded again in a different pattern. We selected the timeline where that asteroid was hit by a meteor 7 hours ago. Then we selected the one where it wasn't. Then the one where it was hit by 3 meteors. Past, present, and future are just positions in space-time. We can see all of them and choose which one is real. The synthesis units were frantically calculating, their mechanical minds trying to process the implications. If this is true, you're not just manipulating reality. You're choosing it. You could select any outcome for any event. Within limits, Sarah acknowledged. The more improbable an outcome, the more energy it takes to collapse that possibility into reality. We can't just select a timeline where the sun explodes, for instance, but small changes, quantum fluctuations, mechanical failures, the path of a single particle, those we can choose freely. The Vorthak hegemon's dreadnought had finally stabilized, its emergency systems bringing it back online. His voice, when it came through the comm, was subdued. You could have destroyed my ship. You could have selected a reality where its reactor core breached. Yes, Sarah said simply, but we didn't come here to destroy. We came to demonstrate. Demonstrate what? The hegemon's question carried none of his earlier arrogance. That humanity has surpassed us all? That our technology is obsolete? No, hegemon. To demonstrate that we're ready to be partners. Real partners. Not observers watching from the sidelines, but contributors to the galactic community. The paradigm moved back to its original position, its dark hull still showing those strange shifting patterns. Around it, hundreds of the galaxy's most advanced warships floated in stunned silence. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been called within hours of the military demonstration. Never in its 50,000-year history had the Council convened so quickly. Representatives who had been laughing at humanity just hours before now sat in tense silence, their various forms of anxiety on full display. The Vorthak hegemon stood at his platform, his crystalline body dulled with stress fractures, a sign of deep distress among his kind. The Melody representative had manifested all 4 of her eyes in the physical realm, each one looking in a different direction as if watching for threats. The Etherean speaker's cloud form flickered between dimensions more rapidly than usual. A nervous tick that sent small lightning bolts across the chamber. "We need to discuss the human situation," the hegemon began without preamble. "What we witnessed today changes everything." "Changes?" The Bendathi admiral's suit bubbled with agitation. "It destroys everything. If they can manipulate reality itself, choose their victories before battles begin, then all our defenses, all our weapons, all our power means nothing." "Perhaps we should strike first," suggested a representative from the warrior species known as the Kreks. Their blade-like appendages clicked nervously. "Destroy Earth before they build more ships. And how would we do that?" The Melody representative's mental voice carried bitter irony. "Send a fleet to Earth? They'll just select the reality where our ships never arrive, or where they explode in transit, or where we decided not to attack at all." Captain Sarah Chen's image appeared on the main display. She had sent a message requesting to address the council, and given what they had just witnessed, no one dared refuse. "Members of the council," she began, her tone respectful but confident. "I understand you have concerns about our technology. I'd like to explain how humanity reached this point, and what we propose for the future." The Etherean speaker rumbled with barely contained energy. "Explain?" "Yes, explain how a species that discovered spaceflight 3 centuries ago has surpassed civilizations that have existed for millennia." Sarah's image shifted to show a display of Earth, a blue and green sphere covered in clouds. "Earth is what you call a chaos world. Our planet has 7 major continents, hundreds of nations, thousands of cultures, and billions of individuals all thinking differently. We've never had a single unified government or culture." "That's a weakness," the Vorthak hegemon interjected. "Unity brings strength." "Unity brings conventional thinking," Sarah countered. "Your species' hegemon achieved unity 40,000 years ago. Since then, every Vorthak thinks in similar patterns, approaches problems the same way. It's efficient, but it also creates blind spots." She changed the display to show human history. Wars, revolutions, scientific breakthroughs, artistic movements, all happening simultaneously across the globe. Humans evolved surrounded by contradiction. We had to learn to hold multiple conflicting ideas in our heads at once. Religious believers worked alongside atheists. Democratic nations traded with dictatorships. Artists and scientists, warriors and pacifists, all existing in the same space. "Chaos," the Melody representative observed. "Controlled chaos," Sarah corrected, "and that chaos prepared our brains for something unique. When we discovered quantum mechanics, most species struggled with the paradoxes, particles being in 2 places at once, observer effect changing reality. These concepts broke the minds of unified thinkers. But humans, we were already comfortable with paradox." The display showed human scientists working on equations that hurt to look at, mathematical proofs that seemed to contradict themselves, while still being true. "When we met the Galactic Council 300 years ago," Sarah continued, "we realized something. Every advanced species had followed the same path. 3rd dimension, 4th, 5th, 6th, each one building logically on the last. You all thought the same way because you all evolved on peaceful, unified worlds. You achieved harmony early and it shaped your thinking. You're saying disharmony made you superior?" The Etherean speaker's tone carried disbelief. "Not superior. Different. While you were perfecting 6th-dimensional travel, we were asking weird questions. What if dimensions weren't linear? What if you could skip from 3rd to 7th without passing through the others? What if consciousness itself was the key to dimensional manipulation?" She showed an image of the research station on Europa, buried beneath kilometers of ice. "We had scientists from 200 different Earth cultures working on the project. A Buddhist monk from Tibet worked alongside a quantum physicist from Nigeria and a composer from Brazil. They all saw reality differently, and when we combined those viewpoints..." "You broke through," the hegemon said quietly, understanding dawning in his voice. "We didn't break through. We went around. We realized the 7th dimension wasn't a place or a state, it was a perspective. A way of seeing all possibilities at once and choosing which one becomes real. And human brains, adapted to chaos and contradiction, could handle that perspective." The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Then a smaller species representative, one of the insectoid hive, spoke up. "If you have this power, why reveal it now? Why not conquer us all?" Sarah's expression grew serious. "Because that's not who we want to be." Humanity has a dark history of conquest and oppression. We've learned from our mistakes. We don't want to rule the galaxy, we want to be part of it. Part of it? The Vorthak hegemon's tone carried skepticism. You could dictate terms to us all. We could, Sarah admitted. But what would that achieve? We'd be alone at the top, feared and resented. Instead, we proposed partnership. Real partnership. She brought up a new display showing technical readouts of the paradigm systems. Several representatives gasped at the complexity of what they were seeing. We're willing to share our technology, Sarah announced. Not all at once, that would be dangerous. But gradually, as species prove ready for it. In exchange, we want to learn from you. Your cultures, your technologies, your perspectives. Humanity's strength comes from diversity of thought. Imagine what we could achieve with the diversity of 300 species. You would share this? The Melody representative's mental voice carried shock. The ability to manipulate reality itself? With safeguards and training, yes. But first, species need to understand what it requires. The seventh dimension isn't just about technology, it's about consciousness. To use it, you have to be able to hold infinite contradictions in your mind simultaneously. You have to accept that all possibilities are equally real until observed. You have to think in ways that will fundamentally change who you are. The Bendathi admiral gurgled thoughtfully. And if we refuse? If we see you as too dangerous? Sarah's expression didn't change. Then we'll respect that decision. We'll withdraw to Earth and develop on our own. But think about what you'd be giving up. Together we could explore dimensions beyond the seventh. We could answer questions about reality that no single species could solve alone. She's right, a new voice said. It was the representative of the gardeners, the peaceful species that grew living ships. When they demonstrated their technology, they didn't destroy anyone. They could have selected realities where we all ceased to exist, but they chose restraint. Restraint today doesn't guarantee restraint tomorrow, the Krex warrior clicked. No, Sarah agreed. But neither does fear guarantee safety. You can choose to see us as a threat and act accordingly, or you can choose to see us as potential partners. The beautiful thing about reality is that both possibilities exist until you make that choice. The council erupted in discussion. Some species grouped together, sharing worried transmissions. Others stood alone, processing what they had heard. The three most powerful species huddled in intense debate. Finally, the Vorthak hegemon spoke. Captain Chen, would Earth accept a provisional full membership? With conditions? What kind of conditions? Transparency about your ship construction, shared research facilities, and a promise that this technology won't be used for conquest. Sarah smiled. We can agree to that. But we have a condition of our own. The council tensed. Here it comes, many thought. The demands, the threats, the leverage. We want every species to send a representative to Earth, not an ambassador, a student. Someone young and curious who can learn how we think while teaching us how you think. We want to create a true cultural exchange. The Melody representative's eyes widened. You want to teach our young your chaotic thinking? We want to learn from each other. Your unity and our chaos. Your harmony and our contradiction. Imagine what new technologies might emerge when 300 different ways of thinking combine. The Etherean speaker's cloud form had stopped flickering, settling into a steady glow. This is unprecedented. No species has ever shared dimension-breaking technology freely. No species has ever developed it through diversity before. Sarah pointed out, we're already unprecedented. Why not continue? The discussion continued for hours. Some species worried about the implications. Others saw opportunity. The warrior races wondered if this technology could be weaponized further. The peaceful races wondered if it could prevent wars entirely. But gradually a consensus emerged. The risk of rejecting humanity was greater than the risk of accepting them. Better to have them as friends than potential enemies. 6 months had passed since humanity's demonstration at the Void Nexus. The galaxy had changed in ways both subtle and profound. The great powers that once dismissed humans as primitive now sent their best minds to Earth to study. Trade routes had been redrawn. Military doctrines that had stood for millennia were being reconsidered. Chen Wei stood in the observation deck of the new station orbiting Earth, watching ships from 100 different species come and go. The station itself was a marvel of combined technologies. Human seventh-dimensional engineering integrated with Vorthak crystal architecture, Melody thought-responsive controls, and Etherean multidimensional storage. It was a symbol of what cooperation could achieve. Ambassador. A young Vorthak approached, her crystalline form chiming softly. She was one of the students in the exchange program, and her natural frequencies had already begun to shift from exposure to human thinking. The council delegation has arrived. Wayne nodded and made his way to the reception hall. Today would mark another milestone in human-galactic relations. The council had requested a full briefing on humanity's dimensional capabilities, and Earth had agreed to provide it. The hall was filled with representatives from every major species. The Vorthak hegemon stood at the center, his previously dismissive attitude replaced by genuine curiosity. The Melody representative floated nearby, all four eyes focused intently. The Etherian speaker had taken a more solid form than usual, showing respect for the occasion. "Welcome to Earth Station," Wei said, bowing slightly. "We're honored by your visit." "The honor is mutual," the hegemon replied, and Wei noticed he meant it. "Your daughter's demonstration opened our eyes to possibilities we never imagined. We're eager to understand more." Sarah Chen entered the hall, accompanied by someone the aliens hadn't expected. An elderly human woman with silver hair and kind eyes, walking with a simple wooden cane. "This is Dr. Amara Okonkwo," Sarah introduced. She led the team that cracked seventh-dimensional physics. The aliens stared. They had expected someone impressive, perhaps augmented with technology. Not a frail human elder who looked like she might need a nap. "You?" The Bendathi Admiral's suit gurgled with surprise. "You discovered how to manipulate reality?" Amara smiled. "Not discovered, young one, remembered." "Remembered?" The Etherian speaker rumbled with confusion. "Please sit," Amara said, settling herself carefully in a chair. The most powerful beings in the galaxy found themselves arranging themselves like students before a teacher. "Every species," Amara began, "evolves to match their environment. You Vorthak evolved on a world of crystal caves, so you think in structured patterns. The Melody evolved in thought fields, so consciousness is your nature. The Etherians emerged from dimensional storms, so you naturally shift between realities." She paused, her dark eyes twinkling. "But humans? We evolved on a world that couldn't make up its mind. Deserts next to rainforest, ice beside volcanoes, calm seas that became hurricanes without warning. Our world was chaos, and we had to become chaos to survive." "That explains adaptability," the hegemon said. "Not dimensional manipulation, doesn't it?" Amara asked. "What is dimensional manipulation but adapting to different realities? You all learned to navigate dimensions like learning to walk, one step at a time, each building on the last. But humans learned to run before we could walk properly. We were manipulating reality with our minds before we knew what reality was." She gestured to a display that appeared, showing human history. "Look at our stories. Every human culture has myths about changing reality through will. Gods who speak things into existence. Meditation that transcends physical limits. Prayer that alters outcomes. Magic, miracles, manifestation. All different words for the same thing. Superstition," the Melody representative commented. "Or racial memory," Amara countered. "What if humans always had the potential for seventh-dimensional perception? We just didn't have the mathematics to understand it. Our shamans and mystics weren't making things up. They were glimpsing something real but lacked the framework to explain it." She showed equations that hurt to look at, mathematical proofs that seemed to fold in on themselves. When we finally developed the math, it all clicked. Every human tradition about controlling reality through consciousness suddenly made sense. We weren't learning something new. We were remembering something we always knew but had forgotten how to use. The Krex warrior clicked his blade skeptically. "You're saying humans are naturally seventh-dimensional beings?" "I'm saying consciousness itself is seventh-dimensional," Amara replied. "All consciousness. The difference is that humans evolved with contradictory, chaotic patterns that let us access it directly. You all built technology to reach the seventh dimension. We just had to remember we were already there." Sarah stepped forward, taking over the presentation. "Let me show you what we mean." She activated a display showing the paradigm's core system. "This isn't really a machine. It's an amplifier for human consciousness. The pilot doesn't fly the ship. They think it into being where they want it. But the power requirements," the Etherian speaker began, "are zero," Sarah interrupted. "Because we're not moving the ship. We're selecting the reality where the ship is already where we want it to be. No energy is expended because nothing actually changes. We just observe a different pre-existing possibility. The gathered species, exchanged glances of amazement and concern. This is why we need diverse thinking, Wei added. Humans can access seventh-dimensional space naturally, but we can only see it through human perspectives. When a Vorthak learns our technique, they'll see crystalline patterns we miss. When a melody grasps it, they'll find thought paths we can't imagine. Every species will add their own understanding, revealing new aspects of reality. You mentioned Dreadnought-class ships, the hegemon said carefully. Larger than the paradigm. What are their capabilities? Sarah and Amara exchanged glances. Then Amara spoke, her voice gentle but firm. Would you like to see one? The delegates tensed. Several species representatives unconsciously moved closer to exits. They're not weapons, Amara assured them. They're exploration vessels. We call them reality weavers. Space outside the station rippled in a way that made everyone's sensory organs ache. Then something emerged that challenged the very concept of ship. It was 2 kilometers long, but that was the only measurement that stayed constant. Its shape flowed and shifted. One moment a sleek arrow, the next a flowering spiral. Then something that existed in too many dimensions to properly perceive. The hull wasn't just dark like the paradigms. It seemed to be made of solid possibility, potential given form. This is the UES Schrödinger, Sarah announced. It doesn't just select realities, it can temporarily create pocket dimensions where different physical laws apply. We've used it to explore regions of space where normal physics breaks down. Create dimensions? The Melody representative's mental voice was strained. You're talking about playing with the fundamental nature of existence. Which is why we need oversight, Wei said firmly. Human perspective alone isn't enough for this level of power. We need the wisdom of species that have existed for millennia. Your caution balances our curiosity. Your harmony tempers our chaos. The Vorthak hegemon stared at the reality weaver as it shifted through configurations that shouldn't be possible. How many of these do you have? 3 completed, 9 in construction, Sarah answered. But we've halted further production until we can establish joint oversight with the Council. This technology is too powerful for any one species to control alone. You would accept limitations? The Etherian speaker sounded surprised. We would accept partnership, Amara corrected. There's a difference between limitations and wisdom. Humans are good at breaking boundaries, but we're learning that some boundaries exist for good reasons. She stood slowly, leaning on her cane. There's something else you should know. We've detected something with our 7th-dimensional perception. Far out beyond the galactic edge, something is approaching. Not in normal space, but through dimensions we don't fully understand yet. It will arrive in perhaps 50 years. The hall fell silent. First contact with something from beyond the galaxy had always been a theoretical possibility. But now... Hostile? The Krex warrior asked immediately. Unknown, Amara replied. It's too alien to read its intentions. But it's vast and it's deliberately heading our way. This is why we revealed our technology now. Whatever comes, the galaxy needs to face it united. The weight of this revelation settled over the assembly. The petty rivalries and power games of the past suddenly seemed insignificant. Then we have work to do, the Vorthak hegemon said, his crystalline form ringing with determination. If humanity's chaos gave birth to this technology, imagine what all our perspectives combined might achieve. Wei smiled. On that note, we have a proposal. A joint research facility, built in 7th-dimensional space itself. Representatives from every species working together, sharing perspectives, pushing the boundaries of what's possible. The goal? The Melody representative asked. To be ready, Sarah said simply. Whatever comes from beyond the galaxy, we'll meet it not as humans or Vorthak or Melody, but as one galactic civilization. Our differences will be our strength.